With the holidays in full swing, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by stress, unhealthy eating, and those pesky winter bugs. Today, staying healthy and quick tips to bounce back after overindulging. Don't miss this one. Your wellness might just depend on it. As we continue to transition seasons and discuss the importance of quality supplements, I wanted to share a special offer from my favorite supplement company, Seeking Health. You can get 10% off your entire order at Seeking Health by going to the link at my website, natalietysdal.com/favorites. It's a great opportunity to try their high-end quality products and experience the benefits for yourself. Seeking Health offers a wide range of supplements designed to support your body's natural processes. Whether you're looking to optimize your digestion, boost your energy, or improve your mental clarity, they have something for everyone. One of the things I love about Seeking Health is their commitment to quality. Their products are GMO-free, backed by a 60-day money-back guarantee, and formulated with pure, scientifically backed ingredients. My family uses them. Remember, Seeking Health supplements are not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any diseases. They're designed to support your body's natural healing processes. So if you're ready to take your health to the next level, be sure to check out natalietysdal.com/favorites. Let's embrace prevention, support our well-being, and maximize our body's healing potential. Hi, everyone. It's Natalie. Welcome back to the podcast. We have talked a lot this year about health, and this month is particularly important. It's the time of year when we all slip, right? So let me just say, you don't need to feel guilty about it. Have some fun. Don't beat yourself up, but you can do something to help yourself feel even better and help yourself in the long run. Today's episode is all about staying healthy during the hectic holiday season. And if you're listening to this outside of December, these tips still apply to you. My guest today is Devon Nelson, a board-certified family nurse practitioner at Big Life Integrative Health. She's also a certified practitioner with the Institute for Functional Medicine. Today, we're going to talk about functional medicine and why it's becoming such a buzzword. Maybe you have heard of it, but you don't know what it is. Let me just say, as a health reporter for many years, things like this become buzzwords because they're working. Devon shares some very insightful tips on managing holiday stress, dealing with the not so healthy foods we tend to indulge in, and the importance of hydration, especially when you've had one too many. We also talk about IV therapy and why it might be exactly what you need when you're under the weather. But we don't stop there. Devon gives valuable information on how to boost your immune system. And for those of you worrying about the toxins in our everyday food and products, Devon offers some great tips on what you can do to minimize your exposure. You don't want to miss this episode, especially if you're looking for ways to survive and thrive during the holidays and year round. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and don't forget to sign up for my weekly newsletter at natalietysdal.com, where I'll give you links to all of the important things we talk about on the podcast and much more. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get started with Devon Nelson. Devon, thanks for joining me and happy holidays.
Merry Christmas. It's super wonderful to be here.
So I want to talk about functional medicine, staying healthy, the problems we often see around the holiday times. But let's start with the basics for those who don't know. What is functional medicine?
Absolutely. So it's kind of a little bit of a buzzword nowadays. It's got a lot of meaning behind it, which is really great. It's amazing to be in this space, but it really means kind of working from the ground up. So it's kind of really understanding what's causing the root of the problem. And so in functional medicine, I'm a nurse practitioner, so I'm able to still use medications and things to kind of help with symptoms, because a lot of times that root is going to be a lot of lifestyle changes, which can be really hard and can take some time. And so it's really important that we look at the ground underneath, but then also help address the symptoms. So it's always, the goal would always be a combination of the two practices so that someone can get some relief, but then also you got to work on the ground underneath, which is really the root of functional medicine, to be able to like wean people off the meds or off even the supplements or whatever it might be.
How did functional medicine, why is it a buzzword? Why are we seeing more of it? As a health reporter, I've become aware of it, obviously. But for people who are hearing this for the first time, why is it becoming so popular?
Yeah, I think people are kind of waking up to the challenges of Western medicine and like strictly traditional just Western medicine in regard to side effects with drugs. They just, are promised certain things, maybe buy these drugs, and they just don't work that well, / have a ton of side effect profile. And so it's this idea of like, I don't want to be on this forever. And so how do we kind of work towards a better foundation so that maybe there's a period of time you're on it, but then we actually can move you off of it when we talk about chronic disease or pain or weight loss or all of those pieces, because there's always that root that's causing it. And so unless you're addressing the root, a lot of times Western medicine providers say you're going to be on this the rest of your life. And it just doesn't provide a very good quality of life. And so really functional medicine is kind of working on that quality so that people can move in a better direction long term.
Oh, we understand what that is now. I'm a big believer because I want to know why I've got issues.
Yes.
Because
absolutely.
I have found as a health reporter for many years that exactly what you said. You start taking your medication, and then years later, you're taking medications because of the medications, and you really don't even know what the problem is.
Yeah. And I have a lot of patients where they'll stop or we'll wean them off a med, and they're like, I didn't know it was causing all these other problems. I was like, wow, what a gift.
Yeah.
We solved a few things just in one.
Let's talk winter issues, holiday issues. What are the most common things you're seeing? And for someone listening thinking, I don't feel good, I want to feel better, what can I do?
Yeah.
Let's talk about seasonal issues and recommendations that you have.
Yeah, so it kind of comes into a few different categories. So when we talk about seasonal, usually around family, maybe not eating the best of foods, and that can be pretty stressful on your system, depending on how, well you get along with family and different things. And so the interesting part about stress is it can really shut down your gut, which is a really big problem. So when you hit that, sympathetic nervous system, which is that fight or flight response, it really kind of diverts all the blood away from the gut because it gets this activation of, oh gosh, I'm running from a bear. I don't have time to digest food. And so a lot of times patients with that stress response of maybe being around family members or just having a lot going on, it can really shut down the gut and cause a lot of bloating, constipation, or diarrhea just from maldigestion. And so there's a few different things you can do to help decrease that stress response. Like L-theanine is a great supplement. It's just an amino acid, but it's something that can really bring your stress threshold from here just down a little bit. And it just can help you digest food a little bit better. Just kind of lowers that sympathetic response, which is really great. Deep breathing, meditation, all of those are good options. So stress is something we always want to address. I find it is like very much a root cause for a lot of patients, especially with their digestion, but then also with a lot of other pieces in their body.
Yeah. And during the holidays, of course, we think we're just out having more fun, going to parties and all of that, but that's stress. So that's year round, but especially during the holidays. I love the L-theanine. That's something that people can pick up at most health food stores or online, right? So it's a simple thing you can do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And then when we're talking about eating, you always want to make sure you're trying to, if you have one day of bad eating, it's really not going to ruin you forever, right? I tell patients there's always moderation. There's a balance in life, right? The goal is that, you have maybe Christmas Day or whatever you celebrate that day that you kind of have like a rougher day of eating. But then the goal is always to kind of get back on the bandwagon, like recommit yourself to enough protein, managing your carbs, complex carbs, limiting sugars, limiting seed oils. All of that is really important. But I have a lot of patients like, well, what if I just cheat one day? I'm like, it's going to be okay. You got to have balance in life, right? Like you still have to have room for that joy of enjoying those things that you love, but recognizing they're not the best for you. So you have to modulate, moderate some of that.
Yeah. So I think this is really important because a lot of us mess up or we do. We say, I'm just going to go, I'm going to have whatever I want for this party that I'm going to.
Correct.
Then the next day you don't feel so well. So you go, oh, I just don't feel well. And it starts this cycle of
that is the problem.
Continuing to eat poorly, drink alcohol, these things. So what I'm hearing you say is have a bad day and then commit to yourself. You're back on track the next day.
That's exactly right. Yep. And it's just really important to make it not a trend, but it's totally okay to have a cheat meal. Like that's how we, as humans can live and be normal functioning. You can't be so strict all the time. It's not human. It's not real life, And so it's important to do something that you feel like you can consistently implement, which is good.
I had someone tell me years ago, and it reminds me of what you're saying, that when you eat, you define it as I'm eating for pleasure or I'm eating for purpose.
Absolutely.
And when it's the pleasure, enjoy it. But then the next day, don't continue the pleasure over and over.
That is where people get into trouble. Correct.
Okay, so getting back on track, We've got the L-theanine and some of the things we can do to help. But what else, especially in the day after, say it's the hangover or the bloating, what are some things we can do to get back on track?
Absolutely. Biggest thing, water. You need to flush your system, right? Alcohol is an amazing diuretic. And so the problem is most people have that hangover because they're not hydrated. They're very, very shriveled. And so water with some electrolytes can be really, really good. And then the key is like really that next day, limiting your sugar intake. Sugar is very inflammatory. Same thing with like seed oils. And trying to do like some protein, like leftover protein is totally fine. But really trying to kind of reset your system and kind of go that lower carb can be really helpful to like lower that inflammation, which is awesome. And then going for exercise. Exercise is an amazing tool for kind of gobbling up some of those carbs and burning through some of the calories, literally you just consumed. But it also allows you to sweat. So you detox really well when you exercise because you kind of get it all out, which is awesome. So your sauna too can be a really great option if patients don't sweat as easily. So those are some great things to try like that day after to kind of just reset your system, get you back on track and kind of feeling better again after you kind of didn't eat the best.
Yeah. What are some of the other issues this time of year that you commonly see? I mean, we're here in America. I know people listen from different places, but we're in the winter season. So you're going to see more winter issues with colds and flu and things like that. But what are some other things this time of year that you deal with, and what advice can you give us?
Yeah, so I would say the upper respiratory has been really bad this year. It's been pretty wild, the extent of just flu, COVID, RSV. It's been kind of intense. And so we have a lot of patients they'll do like IV therapy, like we do some methylene blue, some ozone, things that help modulate the immune system. Methylene blue is really cool because it has a lot of antiviral properties that are really strong. So as soon as you start feeling kind of that cold or that upper respiratory, you come in, we can do an IV of methylene blue, and it really helps clear your system and get you back on a better track.
You know, this IV therapy, if you want to talk about this for just another moment, I know it's not brand new, but really over the last couple of years, we see more and more places that are doing this. I had just been in with you guys, become familiar with you after getting food poisoning. And what is the IV therapy doing? Of course, colds and things like that, but why is it so good?
Yeah, so it's pretty awesome. I mean, the cool part is when it bypasses the gut. So like we're able to give you nutrients directly into your system. So much more bioavailable to your cells. When you take oral supplements, they're good for like longer lasting realities, like on a daily basis, but you are going to have that permeability where you just don't absorb everything, right? You pee a lot of that out or you poop a lot of that out still just because there's that membrane there. And so when we do it IV, you get those nutrients directly at the cellular level. Really cool. And so
it's going to speed up your recovery.
Exactly. Yep. So you can really heal much faster is the goal. Like when you have post-food poisoning or upper respiratory or whatever, your body's burning through all those nutrients really quickly because it's really trying to heal itself, right? It's trying to calm down the inflammation. It's kind of combat the bacteria, the virus that it's fighting. And so especially with like food poisoning, I mean, fluid is a game changer. Like you feel, immensely better. But same thing with like the upper respiratory. If we can oftentimes hydrate people well and then also give them the vitamin C, the cellular nutrients their body needs to heal, it can really help the recovery. But I think the goal is always like, as soon as you start feeling bad, that would be the time to come in. Yeah. Sometimes the post is harder to recover from once your body's already kind of been through the ringer than like the pre. And so that's kind of the goal, is just really trying to catch it as soon as you start to feel.
Can you circumvent? So for instance, I've got a high schooler. He comes home and he's coughing and I'm like, oh boy, here we go. Can you circumvent some of these things? Can you get ahead of it and avoid it? I always say, as soon as you start feeling rotten, cut out the sugar. I tell, at least in my family, I say cut out the dairy because I don't know if this is true, but I feel like it adds to the phlegm and the things going on.
It's very mucogenic. Yeah, it adds a lot of mucus to your system. A lot of times I'll optimize patients. Like at Big Life, we do a lot of more extensive labs, especially in the functional med department. And so we do like zinc and magnesium and things that are very important and omega-3s, very important for your overall inflammation. And sugar, seed oils, all of those will really inflame you. And that makes your immune system a lot weaker because it's working so much on the inflammation, it doesn't have time to handle the virus or the bacteria that your body's trying to work on. And so the goal is always shifting the immune system back to a more protective immune system instead of a more inflammatory immune system. And so things like zinc, vitamin D, quercetin's a really good one because it's a mast cell stabilizer, but also has a great immune properties. All of those, if you take them, especially during the winter, can be huge at helping get your immune system more protective and less inflammatory, which is you're gonna be sick way, way less, which is
So
what
do
you
that
need.
throughout the winter season? Take those on a regular basis daily?
Yeah, so I do usually, especially if patients have been really sick the year prior, have them take, vitamin D, usually based off their blood level, because that one is fat soluble. So it is something you can become more toxic in, but usually have them do like 5,000 IUs of D3 plus K2 daily, and then usually up to 30 milligrams of zinc. Anything beyond 30 for a long period of time can cause a copper deficiency. So you do have to be a little bit careful with that. But up to 30 daily, you'd be totally fine. And then you can pulse if you do have a viral upper respiratory. Zinc is a great option to pulse at higher doses, but 30 daily is great. And then the quercetin is wonderful as well. So that's a mast cell stabilizer, but is really good for like COVID, flu, anything that's going to create that histamine response from a virus, which is.
Yeah. And all of those things that you just mentioned, are they good for the entire family? What about our kids, keeping them healthy in the winter?
Zinc is incredibly important for especially kids. I've seen a few kids where we do check blood on kiddos, just especially if they're harder to treat or they've had a lot of challenges with upper respiratory or frequent infections. And I've seen kiddos where their zinc is so low, because if you take a lot of frequent antibiotics where kids will with strep or ear infections or whatever it might be, and it will totally drop their zinc because a lot of those nutrients are postbiotics. So your gut flora actually digests some of the food for you, and then you're actually absorbing some of those nutrients from what the bacteria have like kind of pre-digested. And so it's really important to optimize zinc, especially for kids, because it's a huge cause for frequent upper respiratory or just frequent viral infections. We also have a really cool, which I'm really excited about, probiotic that's for your mouth. It's like an upper respiratory probiotic. So you can use it for adults or kids. It just dissolves in your mouth, but it can be really helpful for recurrent strep and like really calming down, like kind of like re-establishing a better ecosystem in your mouth, which can be good for like cavities or frequent cavities or, frequent strep. So there's a lot of really cool stuff coming out with.
I've never heard of that. That's great.
Yeah, it's really cool. And then kids can do it too, which is great because it's just like a yummy, chewy, dissolvable tablet.
Yeah, anything chewy, gummy.
Yeah, I know.
How
right?
I get my kids to take vitamins, right?
Absolutely.
So you mentioned something that I want to talk about, and that is doing blood work. Because for so many of my listeners, and I know for myself over the years, I've learned to get the blood work, but we kind of shoot in the dark. It's like, I'm going to buy that multivitamin, or I'm just going to pick up this because so-and-so said to do it. How important is it, and how much of a difference does it make when you can find what someone has? And not everyone can afford that.
Correct.
So maybe there are just some general things that are going to be good for everyone. But how much of a difference does it really make? And what recommendations do you have for people to get that done?
Yeah. So I do find a lot of utility in blood work just because I'm always kind of surprised when I think someone might have like low ferritin or an iron deficiency or low zinc or different things. And I check the blood work and I'm like, that's not necessarily your story. That's really interesting. Or vice versa. I check their blood work, their zinc's super low. And I'm like, how do you get sick a lot? Patients are like, yes, it's just the worst. But I didn't mention that because we weren't addressing that problem, right? And so I do find there's a lot of utility in blood work. We do definitely more extensive panels. And at Big Life, we can draw blood through insurance, which is really awesome. So if patients have met their deductible and they've had a lot of out of expenses that year, then it can be a great time to do some blood work just because your insurance is more likely to cover it. And then you can kind of get those bigger panels without there being a lot of overhead cost. But that being said, we have a lot of patients who are cash pay as well, don't have insurance or on a health share or just different ways of insuring themselves. And we have really good cash pay rates. So patients are always surprised of wow, there's that much and it's only this much money? That's amazing. Normally I get a bill that's much more. So we have a lot of creative ways to kind of get around some of those pieces. But yeah, I do find blood work to be very helpful in a lot of situations.
Well, and you think about getting ahead of the situation and getting healthy so that you're not paying on the back end to get sick.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So you get yourself stabilized and really fine tune all of those vitamins. Are there any other issues this time of year? We talked about holiday stress and eating well, but other things that you're commonly seeing that maybe earlier in years prior you didn't see as often? They're just more common illnesses or issues?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes with women, we'll see with just honestly stress, you'll have like a lot of more hormonal changes. So what happens is something called the cortisol pull, where like essentially cholesterol is where all our hormones come from, whether it's sex hormones being estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, or if it's more cortisol, essentially, is also a hormone. And so your body will pull some of that. If you're having a lot of cortisol response, it'll pull all that hormone to itself instead of allowing your progesterone to be optimized or your testosterone or your estrogen. And so it can really sometimes change women's cycles. Their cycles will get shorter. They're not ovulate. They'll kind of skip stuff, which is a little obviously concerning, because when you have regular cycles, it's actually a really good way of, it's like how you're healthy, right? Women who have really normal regular cycles, ovulation is a very healthy thing that should happen every month. And so if women are skipping, you're like, is there something else going on that we need to address? Yeah. And then just in general, like kind of talking, we do a lot of toxin load discussion at Big Life, just because we do find that for a lot of people, their symptoms, and this isn't necessarily this season, but just like I would say in our current world, there is a relatively high toxic load, whether it's, the glyphosate you eat in your food or the products you put in your skin, and just your exposure with breathing and pollution. I mean, it is something that our body is constantly having to detox. And so there's a whole fun world of that. Oftentimes we have to optimize patients first, like get their fatigue a little bit better, kind of build them up, because the detox can take some energy. But I do find that is a big root cause for a lot of people.
Okay, so back up for me for just a moment, because I think we deal with the toxins, right? We treat it. But you mentioned like some of the food or some of the things we put on their skin. Maybe this is a whole nother podcast. We'll do it another time.
It
but if you
might
could
be.
briefly, I want to avoid toxins, Devon. Like I don't want toxins. How do I know what the toxins are?
Yes, it is really hard. So, I mean, there is some controversy about organic foods. I do recommend a majority of my patients eat organic foods, because if there's any way to decrease toxin load, you should try to do it, right? So trying to do organic foods is great. There's still some contamination. Like they're not perfect for sure. In our house, we try to soak all our fruits and veggies in either baking soda or vinegar, just because it helps pull that extra layer off of whatever it might have been exposed to. I'm really big on organic and grass-fed beef or pasture-raised pork, because those animals eat a lot of vegetables. And so you're basically concentrating whatever that toxin load, whether it's whatever they're spraying on the corn or the grain. Ideally, it's grass would be the goal, just because that's the best omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. It's going to be way better for you than ideally the grain-fed beef. But you really want to try to get those organic, because what they're eating, it's going to concentrate in the meat. So those are kind of the big food ones. Always washing your food before you eat them, like those more common sense pieces. And then the environmental working group is a great resource for products, right? So if you do skincare or lotions or all of those pieces, because they kind of help rate it based off of toxicity. And so unfortunately, like the UK and like the EU have had really strict regulations on what they've allowed, or definitely stricter, what they've allowed to be put on people's
It's
skin.
shocking when you look, and if you really, I watched a TED Talk, it's been a few years, on how different things are.
It is intense.
Even the same packaged foods and milk and things, the same thing. A box of cereal here is very different than that same brand.
Seed oils along with food dyes. Yeah, it's wild. And a lot of that is over Instagram. You'll see all the different people who compare things, and it's fascinating. It's a whole different world when we talk about what's in Europe. I have a lot of patients who go to Europe and they're like, I felt amazing. And I'm like, I know. And then they come here and they're like, why do I feel so awful? And I'm like, yeah, it's a big piece of the toxin load, because they have such more stringent regulations, which is a big deal.
You can't just go to the grocery store, fill up your cart, go home, and in America feel like I'm going to be healthy.
That's very true.
I mean, we really have to be wise. Hopefully listen to podcasts like this one, where we're educating ourselves, and we're not. I have a daughter who, I was really actually proud of her. She's an adult now, who figured out her headaches were always after she ate something that had red food dye.
Yep.
Always. And it was shocking. It was like, wow, hot tamales, get a headache.
Yep.
And we had some Jell-O over Thanksgiving, and she's like, I'm just going to do it because I want the special Jell-O. I'm going to have a headache tonight.
Yep.
But people wonder why, and it's not going to be the case for everyone, but
absolutely,
we have to educate ourselves, right?
Yeah. And I tell patients all the time, like it's the goal. The goal is that you maybe don't avoid everything forever, right? But there's a lot of freedom in knowing what is causing different symptoms, especially like food or like what you're eating, what you're putting in your body. Because then you can choose, like on your birthday, I'm going to have those hot tamales, or I'm going to have that cake. And I know I'm going to feel like crap the next day, but I know what it was from. And I don't feel like crap all the time, which is like, there's so much freedom in that of knowing what is causing what. It's like really cool.
Yeah. Well, I just appreciate the information that you guys give out. I've learned a lot from you. That's why I wanted to have you on the podcast. The IV made a world of difference, by the way. When I got food poisoning, I didn't know where it came from. It was bad. It was really bad. I was really sick. And then just last week, it's been 2 months, I got a notice from Costco, they'll probably not like me, saying, you bought organic carrots. I take it back. I don't think they were organic. You bought carrots that were tainted with salmonella. So now 2 months later, I'm able to finally say that must have been what it was.
That
was
must have
carrots.
been it.
It was carrots. I thought it was being healthy.
Yeah.
But some of those packaged things, like these were the baby carrots that were already cut. Do you soak those as well? You soak all of it?
Yeah.
Baking soda, vinegar, all of that? Like they were
recommend.
prepackaged and trimmed.
Because they can carry, especially non-organic baby carrots, they can carry some of that load. But yeah, I mean, any of the fresh fruits and vegetables, I usually soak, like blueberries, especially. I don't soak leafy greens, just because they would get really gross, but you have to get those organic. They have a very high toxin load. So the other option is because organic's expensive. It's hard for sometimes patients to afford. And it's something where the Environmental Working Group every year puts out a Dirty Dozen, which is the 12 foods you need to get organic. And then the Clean 15, which is like the non-organic, like usually they're root vegetables, or like broccoli tends to be on that, where they just don't carry a high toxin load. You still want to wash them really well and, maybe soak them for a little bit, but you don't have to I have to get these organic, right? Like when you're prioritizing cost, that's a big deal.
Yeah. And I will say, I've learned, and I know you have the same belief, that if you're healthy and your body can fight these things, it's going to be easier when you get it. I was not in a really healthy place when I got the food poisoning, so I went down hard.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll have more resilience. I mean, that resilience is key as you get older. And same thing with muscle mass. The goal is as long as you keep muscle mass as you get older, your resilience is going to be so much better. If you go down, it's not going to be near as far. And that's where we're always working on building people up, so that if they do dip, they don't dip super low, because those low dips are harder to climb out of.
They sure are.
Not easy.
Well, happy holidays again to you and everyone back at the office. And thanks for your knowledge and for the tips to get through the holiday season. And we'll do it again sometime. We'll dive deeper into a couple of these other issues.
That sounds great. Have a wonderful day.
Great to talk to you. You too. Thank you for joining the Natalie Tysdal podcast. You can follow along on Instagram and at natalietysdal.com. Subscribe to the show to catch every new episode and leave a review so I can continue to bring you fresh content. See you next week.